Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching from. This is another section with maa'm Tutu. Today, we are still on cost accounting, still on the topic cost accounting. We are going to be looking at some notes regarding the topic cost accounting. In grade 11, you learned about the general ledger, but for grade 12, we need to know how to write this note. And the only one we are going to look at in the ledger will be the work in progress. The work in progress. So we start with the direct material cost note. The reason for this note is to get the raw material issued. The raw material issued. We looked at the work in progress as a ledger. The reason for this work in progress is to get the the cost of finished goods, and then factory overhead cost, of course, to get the total factory overhead cost. And then for finished goods, the reason is to get the cost of sales. I take a question from one of the workbook, an example from one of the workbook. It says the following information was extracted from the accounting record of Chantel manufacturers of ladies bag. We are asked to draw the general ledger, but as I told you, we are going to be looking at the note. Yes, we are looking at the direct material cost, the work in progress, the finished goods, as well as the factory overhead cost, and also the indirect material. Let's start with the direct material cost. The direct material cost, we have an opening balance of 67,224. Then to the opening balance, we add our purchases. We have two types of purchases. We have purchases made in cash and the one made on credit. So we add the cash was for 389,200 plus the purchases made on credit, which is 79,332. When you add the two together, you get 468,532. Now, our closing balance was not given, but we were given the raw material issued for production, which is the final answer for our direct material cost. So we were given the raw material issued for production. So for me to get the closing balance, I will have to do my calculations. For me to get the closing balance, then it will be 496,200 minus 468,532 and minus 67,224. Of course, I will get a negative 39,000, a negative 39,556, which will happens to be my closing balance. So we are transferring our direct material cost issued. Our direct material issued will be transferred to the debit side of our work in progress. Direct material issued will be transferred to the debit side of our work in progress. So I write it as direct material. I transfer the amount 496,200. 496,200. So right now we need to move on to the factory overhead expenses. Like I told you, factory overhead expenses has to do with every other cost apart from direct material and direct labor. And of course, we were given our direct labor. We were given the wages too for our direct labor. The wages for our direct labor was given to us as 338,780. 338,000, which we are also going to put at the debit side of our work in progress. Direct labor, 338,780. 338,780. Now we can look at our factory overhead cost. Our factory overhead cost. Our factory overhead cost, we start with indirect labor. Our indirect labor was given as 105,600. 105,600. Then we look at our indirect material. Our indirect material has to do with consumable store. So I will write it as indirect material with a bracket in front of it. The opening stock for my indirect material was 1,590 plus the indirect material that was purchased for production. Indirect material purchased for production was 70,800. Then I minus my closing balance for the indirect material, which is 1,056. Then I will get my indirect materials used. My indirect materials that was used. So let's do the calculation. 1,590 plus 70,800 and then minus 1,056. That gives us 71,334. 71,334. Then we move on with our factory overhead expenses. We have factory rent. We have factory rent, which was given as 48,000. We also have insurance, factory insurance. Factory insurance stands at 16,000 rent. And then we have maintenance, factory maintenance. The maintenance of our factory stands at 32,500. Depreciation of factory equipment, depreciation of factory equipment, that stands at 28,600. 28,600. And that is all we have for our factory overhead. So we add everything together to get the total of factory overhead, which also we transfer to the debit side of our work in progress. So we have 105,600 plus 71,334 plus 48,000 plus 16,000 plus 32,500 and plus 28,600. And then our total factory overhead stands at 302,034. 302,034, and that is the amount we transfer to the debit side of our work in progress. We write it as factory overhead. 302,034. 302,034. If you look at this question, we were already given the costs of finished goods. we are given the cost price of finished goods. The cost price of finished goods goes to the credit side of our work in progress. So we write it as costs price, cost of finished goods. Write it as cost of finished goods, which we are going to transfer to our finished goods note. So we were given that amount. Cost of finished goods was given to us as 1,136,079. 1,136,079. Of course, we are now to get our closing balance for work in progress. Our closing balance for work in progress. So we have 11,335 plus 496,200, 496,200 plus 338,780 and plus 302,034. Now the total of this gives me a total of 1,148,349. The two sides of my ledger must be equal. So I have 1,148,349. So 1,148,349 minus 1,136,079 will give me my balance carried down, which is my closing balance. So let's take our closing balance. We minus 1,136,079. Our closing balance stands at 12,270. And then we bring it down here. Balance brought down will be 12,270. 12,270. So now we can get our finished goods. Our finished goods, the opening balance of our finished goods, the balance brought down for our finished goods stands at 39,784. So we bring our costs of production. Our cost of production, which is 1,136,079. 1,136,079, which is cost of production. And then obviously we have been given our cost of sales, which is the reason for drawing our finished goods for drawing our finished goods notes. Our cost of sales stands at 1,143,220. So we can get our balance carried down. We can get our balance carried down. So we're going to work from down up. Our balance carried down will be 1,143,000, 1,143,220 minus 1,136,079 and minus 39,784. And then our closing balance here stands at negative 32,643. 643. And that is the notes for the cost accounting. This is me for today. Please feel free to ask your question. In the next episode, we shall be looking at the statement, the costs, the production cost statement. Pardon, next section, we shall be looking at the production cost statement. Please ask your question through the comment, subscribe in order for you to have notification of classes. Please share to help other accounting learners, and also please like in order for you to encourage the tutor, and comment to ask questions. I sign out for now. See you in the next episode for production cost statement. Thank you.